taking time out to join us tonight.
Dom, it's always a treat to be on your program.
Well, Congressman, you had this town hall meeting, I heard, too, very well attended in Medford, about 400 people. Give me what the takeaway for John Adler was from what constituents were telling you on Saturday.
Well, Saturday was in Tom's River. I have pretty much every week a town hall meeting. It's very clear to me the majority of the people in my district don't want the health care bill that came through the House or the one that came through the Senate with the ridiculous Cornhusker kickback and the special deal for this senator and for this state. And so the overwhelming sense I'm hearing from the people throughout my district, whether it's Ocean County, Camden County, or Burlington County, is they don't want me to vote yes on the bill that came through the House, the bill that came through the Senate. And so I've been listening to the people of my district and paying very close attention to their concerns as taxpayers, as Americans, as business people, or whether workers or owners of businesses, and heeding the comments of my constituents closely.
Does that mean then you're prepared, as far as we know it, and you would know better than I where we are now with the final bill, that you will be voting against it if it is the incarnation that we've seen so far?
Well, it's a fair question for which I have to beg off the answer.
Okay.
On Saturday at my town hall meeting, people cheered me when I said I would vote against the Senate bill, and then they booed me when I wouldn't say how I would vote on the next bill. Frankly, I think it's my job to read the bills. I know some members of Congress, it's pretty clear to me a year ago when they were voting some of those things last year, weren't bothering to read the bills. And they're long bills. I think they're probably too long. But it's my job and my staff's job to go through line by line, page by page. It's a heavy slog sometimes, but to go through the stuff, to actually think we understand what's in it before we vote yes or vote no on anything.
Fair enough. No, that is a reasonable approach. Now,
Don, why weren't you when people were booing me for saying I should read the stuff before I make up my mind? But thank you.
Oh, absolutely. No, I agree with you completely on that, John Adler. John, why the delay, though? Why can't people like you get your hands on it? Or do you have your hands on what will be the final incarnation of this?
I don't have the final version. I've heard some summaries from various people in Washington about what's probably in it. But we've been down that road before. This Congress, previous Congresses, you don't want to hear what's probably in it. You want to actually know what is in it and then make a rational decision based on the actual language and an understanding of what that language actually means. So I think people know my inclination is to support real health care reform, and I think the businesses and taxpayers I talk to very much want real health care reform. They're not sure this is it. And so a lot of people are telling me to go back to the drawing board and maybe break it up into several different pieces and try to get those things that are more acceptable to the American people and move forward a little bit slower, recognizing we have a crisis in terms of health insurance, in terms of cost.
Clinton, I don't know what happened there. We lost Congressman Adler. Clinton? All right, 215-839-1210. We'll reestablish with Congressman Adler. You heard his position where he is right now. I think that's certainly reasonable. I just want to ask him a question about what could be in there to change his mind. Suburbs, 610-664-1210, South Jersey, 856-541-1210. We'll get you on board, and we're going to try to take as many callers as we can here momentarily with Congressman John Adler, who is in the center of this firestorm. Congressman, question, hypothetical, you can take it any way that you want. It's not meant, as you know, with an entrapment or anything. What possible fix could be in there, do you hear, that reasonably suddenly would appear that might push you toward voting for this?
Well, I've said all along, since the House Democrats first came out with their proposal last June, I thought the key for all of this was to make insurance more affordable for the businesses that cover the majority of working Americans. The business people I talk to throughout my district and throughout the country are complaining about premium increases. We all know about insurance company abuses, but really what we have to do is get a hold of these costs that are rising year by year.
Right.
And I'm hopeful that somebody will finally recognize that's the big issue, that we've got to curb costs. I think people now recognize that about our giant deficits for our country, but I think we have the same sort of problem, a little bit smaller, in our health insurance industry. We've got to curb those costs somehow. So I don't have a particular answer other than cost has to be the focus, and I'm not sure the House and the Senate bills did nearly enough to satisfy me and to satisfy the business community that I hear from that creates the private sector economy.
Well, I can even picture your face sitting at the Inquirer when we had 7 of you guys there on the health care bill, and you said the same thing then. You've been consistent. That was exactly the tack, and I think that's exactly where we are. Can we get some constituents in with you?
I'd be glad to talk to the voters.
All right, here we go with Congressman John Adler. Let's go to Joe, who is in Mount Laurel on the Big Talker 1210. Joe, go right ahead.
Thank you, Congressman. First, I'd like to thank you for voting no previously. One of the things I'd like to say is that your position that the bill isn't already out there. Two things. Number one is they're asking you to vote on the Senate bill, or actually they're trying to switch you in and say you're going to have reconciliation later on in the Senate bill. So on the Senate bill, would you vote yes or no on the Senate bill?
No, for a number of weeks now, maybe months now, I've been saying I thought the Senate bill was inadequate. I would vote no on it.
So when you, I'm sorry to cut you off, but okay. So when you do say you would vote, or you don't know what the bill is, that is what's before you right now.
Well,
before we can move, right?
Joe, it's unclear actually what sort of procedural approach the House leadership is going to adopt. It may well be that the House, believe it or not, doesn't ever vote on the Senate bill. As hard as that is for us to accept conceptually, they may try to use some sort of parliamentary maneuver to never vote on the Senate bill.
Well, how would you feel about that, Congressman Adler?
I think it's troubling. I think we should vote on the Senate bill, up or down vote, and then and then those people that want to fix the Senate bill, get rid of the Cornhusker nonsense and the Louisiana stuff and the Florida stuff and other things.
Let's
vote on that bill. No, it's a go, Joe.
But is that how the Constitution is written? I mean, that seems quite contrary to how we run America. Where when I was in fourth grade or fifth grade, and then I think it was PBS had you vote on one side, then they have to vote, then they bring it together, then it goes to the president. That doesn't seem that it's happening here today. Am I correct?
I've never heard of this approach before. I've only been in this Congress for a year and 2 months. I'm baffled by it also, that you could amend a bill without actually voting for the bill itself. It doesn't seem to me the right way to go about things.
Thank you very much. Susan in Chester Springs is here on the Big Talker 1210. You're with Congressman Adler. Go right ahead, Susan.
Congressman Adler, I just want to tell you, congratulations on your stance. It doesn't seem like that everybody feels the same way you do about having to read this bill. But I'm wondering if it's really about helping people anymore, if it isn't more about the president's ego and the administration's ego when he's out there saying, my presidency's on the line, and he's out there stumping. It's really, it doesn't even seem like anybody cares if it's really going to help anybody.
Susan, I appreciate your kind words towards me. I don't read it quite the same way. I think most Americans think there is some need to have health care reform to make it more affordable for the business community and taxpayers. Mm-hmm. I'm not personally convinced this is the only way to do it or necessarily the right way to do it. We need it, but I'd rather build a consensus among people of both parties and bring the American people along rather than having something that seems not to be supported by the majority of our country.
Thank you, Susan. Let's go to Ellen, who is in Medford on the Big Talker 1210. Ellen, you're with your congressman. Go right ahead.
Hi, Congressman Adler. I was at your town hall meeting in Toms River, and I've been at most of your meetings, actually. But my concern is, when you kind of say that it troubles you if we don't follow the Constitution to vote on this, on the Senate bill, and that the rule is something that baffles you and you're not even sure about it. To me, you should be sure about the Constitution. And if it says that we have to have a vote on a bill before it goes to the president, I don't see where there's any ambiguity in that. I don't see where that could be a question. And I see when you say you're troubled by it, I don't see why you're not outraged by it and why you just don't stand against it.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I thank you very much for attending, as you said, maybe many of my town meetings. I've done a lot of them. I hope my wife doesn't get jealous. We're spending so much time together, you and I. But I do know this has been done before. This procedure has been done in previous Congresses, whether Democrat or Republican. For me, I don't think it's the way that I'm comfortable. But I hesitated when Joe a moment ago asked the question about how it was going to happen, because I don't think the people that are pushing the bill, know exactly how they're going to do it. So I can't comment adamantly about it until I actually know what it is they think they are doing.
Thanks very much. Would it be fair to say with you, the proof for our judgment, and we'll certainly want to have you back once the dust settles, is you are going to wait to see the final bill and the mechanism in which they deal with this. But if it's not in keeping with the longstanding principles you've had up to now, you're certainly not going to vote for it.
I think that's the right way to look at this. We have to make sure that we protect our private sector economy and help it. I think we're in such a terrible recession, and things that don't help it are really working against our long-term national interests. So I really want to make something that focuses on our business economy, on private sector growth, on getting us out of this awful recession. And I'm not sure the bill does the sort of things we need right now.